I wish I'd never loved you. She didn't scream it. She didn't slam a door. She said it over a half-eaten plate of pot roast, looking right through me with eyes that used to make my world stop. 40 years. 4 decades of building a life, holding hands through hospital stays, raising kids, sharing every morning coffee, erased in 7 cold words. My hands started shaking so hard I had to set my fork down. I sat there waiting for her to laugh, to tell me it was a terrible joke, or that she was just exhausted. But Margaret just kept eating, like she hadn't just shattered my entire reality into a million pieces. I thought we were happy. I genuinely believed we were the couple everybody else wanted to be. Boy, was I dead wrong. If you're new here, subscribe, I post a new story every day. Okay, so to understand how a man's entire existence gets dismantled in a single evening, we have to go back about 6 months. I'm 64. Margaret is 62. We'd just celebrated our 40th anniversary in May. I spent 3 months planning this cruise for us, nothing flashy, just a nice trip through the Caribbean because she'd always talked about wanting to see the sunset from a sailboat. I mean, I saved up for a year. I got her a ring with 4 small sapphires, one for every decade. When I gave it to her at dinner on the ship, she smiled, hugged me, and said thank you. Now, looking back, wait, read that part again. That smile didn't reach her eyes. Not even close. I just thought she was tired from traveling. I told myself, hey, we're getting older, we don't jump up and down like we used to. Asterisk. I was making excuses, wasn't I? Honestly, I think deep down I knew something was off, but when you've been with someone for 40 years, you don't jump to, she hates me. You jump to, maybe her back hurts. About 2 months after the cruise, I noticed she stopped calling me by my nickname. Small detail, right? For 35 years, I was Bear. Suddenly, I was just Arthur. Every time she said, Arthur, it felt like being handed an official court summons. Then came the attic. Our youngest daughter, Sarah, asked if we still had her old baby photo albums. So on a Saturday morning, I went up to the attic to dig through the old storage tubs. I found the albums, but sitting right behind them was a dark blue leather journal. Margaret's handwriting was on the cover, things I can never say out loud. Asterisk. Now, let me ask you straight up, if you found a diary written by your spouse of 40 years, would you open it? Would you have said something right then, or kept digging? Let me know below. I'm not proud of this. I'll be honest, I didn't expect what came next, but I sat down on a dusty cardboard box and opened it. The first entry was dated 1986. 2 years after we got married. She wrote, Arthur is a good man, but he is not the man who makes my heart race. I chose safety over fire, and I wonder every day if that was a mistake. Asterisk. I felt like someone had punched me right in the solar plexus. 1986. When our eldest son was just a baby. When I was working 2 shifts at the plant to make sure we could afford our first mortgage. While I was coming home with calloused hands and grease under my fingernails, thinking I was building our dream, she was sitting in the living room writing about how I was just the safe option. Is it better to live a comfortable lie for 40 years, or face a brutal truth from day one? I closed the journal. I didn't read any more. Part of me was terrified of what else was in those pages, but another part of me thought, okay, that was 1986. People have doubts when they're young. We grew together. We built a life. Asterisk. I tried to convince myself it was just a ghost from the past. Now here's where I'd have lost it, but I stayed quiet. I put the journal back exactly where I found it, brought the photo albums downstairs, and handed them to my daughter. I watched Margaret interact with Sarah. She was warm, laughing, baking cookies, the perfect mother, the perfect wife. It was like watching an actress finish a scene and wait for the director to call cut. I started watching her closer over the next few weeks. I noticed how whenever I touched her shoulder, her body went tense for just a fraction of a second before relaxing. I noticed how she never initiated a hug anymore. I noticed how she always made sure the TV was on, so there was never pure silence in the room between us. Silence meant we had to talk. Silence meant the truth might leak out. Last Tuesday, I couldn't take the wait anymore. The weight of knowing that dark blue journal was sitting up in the attic like a ticking time bomb. I made dinner, her favorite pot roast. We sat down at the dining table. It was quiet. I turned off the TV in the living room before serving the food. She noticed right away. She picked at her vegetables, avoiding my eyes. I cleared my throat and said, "Margaret, are you happy with me?" She paused. Didn't look up from her plate. "Of course, Arthur. Why wouldn't I be?" I leaned forward. "Because sometimes it feels like you're living with a roommate, not your husband. It feels like you've been somewhere else for a very long time." She put her fork down. Slowly, the air in the room got so thick you could cut it with a knife. She looked up at me, and there were no tears in her eyes. No anger. Just an overwhelming, crushing emptiness. And that's when she said it. "I wish I never loved you." Can a relationship ever survive a line like that, or is it instantly over the moment those words touch the air? My heart literally felt like it seized in my chest. "What?" I whispered. "I wish I never loved you," she repeated, her voice steady, completely devoid of emotion. "Because if I had never loved the idea of what we could be, I wouldn't have spent 40 years settling for a life I never wanted." She explained it to me then. Every word was a methodical strike to my soul. She told me she loved the security I gave her. She loved that I was a reliable father, that I didn't drink, that I worked hard. But she never loved me, the person. She said she spent 40 years convincing herself that stability was enough, trying to force herself to love me the way I loved her. "And the worst part, Arthur," she said, looking right into my eyes, "is that you were so good to me that I had no excuse to leave. I was trapped by your kindness." Imagine hearing that. Imagine finding out that your greatest effort to be a good husband was actually the cage that kept your wife trapped in a life she hated. I sat there while my entire life, 40 years of memories, anniversaries, holidays, quiet mornings, was rewritten right before my eyes. None of it was real. I was the only one in that marriage. I was standing in a room full of memories, realizing I had been alone the entire time. She didn't yell. She just stood up, cleared her plate, washed it in the sink, and walked upstairs to the guest bedroom. She's been sleeping there for 3 days now. We haven't spoken more than 10 words since that night. Yesterday, I called a divorce lawyer. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because if 40 years of my devotion was just a prison sentence for her, the only decent thing left for me to do is unlock the door and let her go. I'm sitting in an empty living room right now, looking at 40 years of framed family photos, feeling like a ghost in my own home. You spend your whole life giving everything you have to someone, thinking you're building a fortress together, only to realize you were building it on sand. Some truths don't set you free. Sometimes, the truth just destroys whatever pieces of you were left. What would you have done if you heard those 7 words after 40 years? Was I right to call a lawyer, or would you have fought for the marriage? Drop your verdict in the comments below. If this story hit home, hit that like button, and subscribe. I post a new story every single day. Take care of yourselves out there, and I'll see you tomorrow.